All right, and welcome back. This is Morning Express. It's now 3 minutes after 8. In case you're joining us now, welcome aboard. Well, today we'd like to continue with the discussion on the Building Bridges Initiative report that was launched yesterday. This is a journey that began 2 years ago, which was culminating in that second report that was being launched yesterday, and of course raised quite a number of issues here and there, and that's what we'd like to discuss. Remember, you're part of this discussion, and we had asked you a question earlier on as to whether you feel that the concerns raised by the deputy presidents are valid, and would like to hear what your take is on that. If you feel that the concerns raised by the deputy president yesterday, and he said he speaks on behalf of several millions of Kenyans, and whether you feel that is those are valid concerns. We're going to be getting into those as we go along. Allow me to read some of the comments that have come through. We have Tobias Mokoya, who says yes, those concerns are valid. We have Roberto saying yes. We have George who says not only Ruto but many dignitaries that attended the launch did raise quite a number of issues that should be addressed in full. And we have Matthew who says the DP is causing confusion. It's not time to raise such concerns. He should let people read the document and decide whether or not to vote for it. This system of politicians deciding for us should stop. The people have the power to accept or reject the Building Bridges Initiative report. And this morning, we are joined by Majority Leader in the National Assembly. That is Honorable Amos Kimunya. Thank you for joining us, sir, this morning, and would like to get straight into it. Maybe I'd just like to start with your personal overview and thoughts of this particular document this far.
Well, let me say, yesterday was a culmination of, obviously, lots of effort that has gone into the making of the first major amendment to the Constitution since it was promulgated in 2010. And this has been triggered by several events, including, the fact that even after 2010, Kenyans are still not sure that we actually got the formula right in terms of solving the problems that have always bedeviled this country. And I would want to actually start by commending the team led by Senator Haji and Professor Adams Law, because they've gone through a very laborious exercise over the last 2 years. They've listened to hundreds and thousands of Kenyans. They've read through memoranda that has been posted, including all manner of things, some relevant to their task, some just expressions of frustration, the issues of the day affecting Kenyans, including somebody wanting to even have COVID issues, included in the BBI. So, but they've gone through all that and teased out and said, this is what we think are the most relevant to solve the problems that were tasked to solve, which is the enhancing the unity of Kenyans and avoiding the kind of problems we get after every election.
Especially after elections.
Especially after the elections.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to some of the things the president did highlight in his speech, which I must say was a very hearty speech. He seemed to speak from his heart. He was not using, a written speech, and literally went to a point of even confessing he being part of what we call destructive politics over time, but he confessed on that. And I'm hoping that leaders can get to a point where they admit. Would you admit that you have been part of that as well, Honorable Kimunya?
I think we've all been part of it, sir. And because when it comes to politics, unfortunately, our Kenyan politics has been about, what do I need to do to defeat my opponent?
Right.
And it's usually then driven by highlighting the weaknesses of the opponent rather than what you want to do for the people. So you'll find, even as we are looking at a very good document like has come through a very consultative process, and which we believe could well be solving the problems, there's a whole group of people who have politically started looking at it from its negatives. What does it not contain, rather than saying, what is it that it contains that is good for Kenya, right? And because nobody is stopped from bringing their own document to supplement what the BBI team has brought. But what we should be looking at now, and I would want to ask Kenyans, as they read this document, let's remember that there will be no time that we ever get a document prepared by a human being that will be accepted by all the human beings. And
that will be perfect.
And that will be perfect. Including even today. Today being a Tuesday, if you ask Kenyans out there on the street, you know, what day is it today? Yeah? You hear some people telling you, okay, it's Tuesday, but it's in the morning. Yeah? Others will be telling you, it's the day before Wednesday. Okay? It's the day after Monday. So even getting concurrence on a thing that is so clear becomes a challenge. So let's, first of all, let's look at what the team has done. Did it answer the challenge that was placed before their hands?
All right.
And the answer to me is yes.
Is yes. Okay, and that's a good place to be, because two things that the president highlighted as he was speaking is, number one, inclusivity. Yes. And let's start with inclusivity, because that brings me to the concerns raised by the deputy president in regards to the office of a prime minister. Of course, there has been the political narrative that this document is purely there to create positions for certain individuals, but we are going to interact with the document and understand it further so that we're able to separate fact and fiction. But the question that the deputy president raised was, how is it that prime minister who is, appointed by the president and is from the majority winning, solving a problem of, winner takes it all? Because that has been one of the contentions that we've had, and the president highlighted this by saying 2 years into the election, we are sorting out election issues, then another 1 year before the elections, we're already campaigning, so we have very little time for work. But anyway, to the question, how does this solve our problem of winner takes it all?
If you look at the last elections, and perhaps not just 2017, 2013, you'll find that between the two presidential candidates, the vote tallies for each of them will be in the order of probably 52% and 48%. Yeah? So it's almost like a 50-50 split between the people in the country.
Right.
But the one who wins takes, forms government, does everything, and the one who loses is told, sorry, you've lost, go home, wait for the next one.
Election.
Right? And they are then denied an opportunity to actively participate in pursuing the issues they had promised within their manifesto. If you look at all within the common system and where people, and we had this before in 2010, where the losing party will provide the office of the leader of the official position. Now, the import of that is the person then comes to parliament and becomes a constant check on the policies of the ruling party, while at the same time persuading the ruling party to adopt some of the policies that they have promised their own people. And constantly reminds people that the people you elected are not delivering what they told you. Had you elected us, we would have done it even better. So when a budget is read out by the ruling party, the official opposition brings in their version of what would have been a better budget. Yeah? So there's a constant debate on issues rather than just personalities. Because after the election, then, when you're there over the next 5 years, the debate in parliament is not who should you have elected, but on this policy, on our health, on education, on defense, our policy is like this. The people you elected are giving you this. We are missing that in our Kenyan politics right now. Okay?
All right.
Because I, as the leader of majority, I'm not there to go and say the Jubilee government is doing this, right? I'm supposed to be checking on the same government what I'm a member of. Yeah?
Right.
The leader of the minority gets frustrated. Because even as members of parliament keep asking questions, demanding statements from government, the chairs of the various committees are the ones who then come to the House and say, you requested a statement on the state of insecurity in a certain area, and we, as a committee, have looked into this. But you cannot interrogate that statement any further.
Right.
Because the minister is not there.
Okay. But help us understand that with this new proposed, expanded executive, would have the president, the deputy president, the prime minister, and their deputies from the winning and majority party.
Right.
Where are the losers? The losers purely are still in, the back seats, their backbenchers.
No, the losers, you got the president forms his cabinet, okay, and government. And that's why the two of them are competing. They are competing to be given the power by the Kenyan people to form government and to deliver on certain pledges. Now, if you don't get to form government, then you form the official opposition. And within the official opposition, you then also have your shadow cabinet. So for every ministry created by the ruling party, you then create your own cabinet, and you're telling people, had we won, this would have been, the cabinet would have presented to you. This is how we would have tackled the problems that are there in Kenya. This is how we would have tackled agriculture, this on a continuous basis.
Right.
So there's an active participation on the issues of the day within Parliament, and almost giving it as, this is the alternative government that you did not elect.
That you did not elect. All right.
And on that basis, what then happens is people are able to look at the two parties during the period between the elections and can make a better informed decision that come next election, perhaps we should have elected this case. So, and constantly we then move our politics from not just looking at, was it Kimunya leading the party or Atieno leading her party, It will be a matter of what policies have we consistently seen these people kind of proposing, and we think that those could solve our problem. And let me also say something, because I think there's a misunderstanding on the creation of prime minister and the deputy prime ministers and all that. People think that these positions are being created to create jobs for the boys, as it were. Immediately we move, which is what Kenyans want, that let's shift the cabinet secretaries or cabinet ministers back to the House, right? That is something that everyone seems to agree, and I'm very happy. If you remember the speech that was given by the deputy president in the UK, in one of his interviews, he actually supported that situation, that cabinet secretaries should move back to the House. But immediately move that with a president who is not a member of the House, with a deputy president who is not a member of the House. You need one of the ministers who will be the one to coordinate the other ministers and to lead government business within the House. That is the first minister, first among equals. You got a prime minister, and with his two deputies. We've had that situation. We have this situation in Tanzania. Right. We have it in about every place where ministers are resident within the parliament. So it's not about creating jobs. This will be members of parliament anyway. So there's no extra salary being paid. All right. And I think the BBI report has made it very clear that we are not creating positions so that people can then be paid double salaries. You can only earn one salary. Right. Okay. Before we move away from that, discourse that's there, there is now the shadow cabinet that you've mentioned would be keeping government in check. But then it brings in the question of national ethos, because every time we've had, even when we've not had an opposition that is in parliament or actively budgeted by the coffers, the issue is that the opposition brings up very, very valid issues keeping government in check. But the minute we have them in office, then things turn around. So how do we deal with a national ethos to a point where they stick to what they say, not just what they stick to what they say even when now they're in government? I think the issue of national ethos, the culture of integrity and inculcating the culture of responsibility and caring for the bigger public good will not just be solved by the election. It's a long-term process, and if you look at the BBI the report, it recognizes that there are some things that will have to be done at the policy level. some are administrative, some even as we get our children into school, they need to be inculcated with that culture of responsibility. So even as they are sitting for the exams, exam cheating, perhaps so many people will actually frown upon. Because when you start at that level, that nobody is doing it for personal good, but for the public good, then you can now trust that when you elect a group of people, that they are coming to keep the government in check, they will then not go and start making compromises with the same government. But remember also, within this system, and I believe when people understand it better, apart from having the opposition formally opposing, or checking on the government of the day, even within the government, the ruling party, there's a front bench and a back bench.
Right.
The front bench will then comprise the ministers and the assistant ministers, who are only probably like 1/3 of the entire ruling party. There's a whole 2/3 of the ruling party that constitutes a back bench that is constantly checking on the front bench with obviously the understanding that if any of the ministers or assistant ministers don't perform, any of the people within the 2/3 could then be appointed. So, and that internal check, first of all, within the ruling party, provides for efficiency and a constant check on those who have been appointed and taken to the front bench. And on the other side, they're also being checked by the opposition. Now, we are missing that vibrancy in the current parliament, in the current constitution, which was modeled on a totally different situation. It works very well within America. It's a federal government. And perhaps they had their own reasons for doing it that way. But for us, we have gone through the Commonwealth system. Funny enough, this current Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Justin Muturi, is actually the chair of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association.
Right.
So by all our practices and everything, we follow the Commonwealth system. But we have got a constitution in 2010 that said, let's forget about that, let's use the American Republican kind of situation with total separation, which in reality has never been a separation.
Okay. Another area, of course, that is a bone of contention is the area of separation of powers, and specifically the judiciary and the executive. Explain to us how the president appointing an ombudsman who is supposed to oversee and sit in the JSC is not a clawback to where we are right now, where we have an independent judiciary.
Let's start with who appoints the Chief Justice?
The president.
The president. Does that weaken the judiciary? I mean, these are some of the things that, the president appoints the commissioners, appoints the Chief Justice, but he's doing it at that point as in his capacity as the head of state.
Okay, but now with the ombudsman, the coming in of the ombudsman becomes different because the ombudsman is there to somewhat oversight and sit in the JSC.
To check on the excesses of the judiciary.
Yes.
Now, can the Chief Justice appoint an ombudsman to check on the excesses of his office? Right? It must be done by somebody else. And that person must be the person who does it on behalf of the people of Kenya. And that can only be the president acting as head of state, who then picks an ombudsman for the judiciary. If need be, puts an ombudsman for parliament or even for the commissions, because people need to know, if I don't get justice in a certain arm of government, where do I go to? Obviously, we already have the office of the ombudsman, the Commission on Administration of Justice.
Right.
But is that the commission the right one for people to seek justice when they are not getting it in the judiciary? And I think the people of Kenya said, let's not overburden that one. Let's that one sort out people getting who are failing to get justice within the administration, within the government side, the executive side. And let's have a similar thing for the judiciary. But in terms of the person appointing that ombudsman must be appointed by somebody. It cannot be the Chief Justice.
What about the fear and the concern of some that he would be serving at the pleasure of the president, and that right there is an interference or compromises the independence of the judiciary?
No, it's actually, the president will nominate and the person will be approved by parliament, right? which is exactly what all the offices, all the oversight offices, including the Auditor General, they are, President nominates, it's approved by Parliament. I mean, we are not creating any office in a manner that is inconsistent with the current offices. So, but you can stretch, like I said, people could call Tuesday the day before Wednesday, or the day after Monday, because they don't want to accept that it's called Tuesday.
and look at it differently. All right. Yeah. And of course, that again will still go back to the national ethos we're talking about, because then the fear for Kenyans is that we've seen where, a president appoints, then that kind of clouds the decision of that particular office. And this of the ombudsman, of course, would be critical, given that they are there to oversight and, check on the excesses of the judiciary.
Remember, they are accountable. They are not just accountable. They are not reporting to the president. They are accountable to the Kenyan people. A member of the public has gone and seeking justice in the courts. Has been going to the courts for the last. You've seen all these old people who started their cases and they narrate and say they have land cases going back to the 1960s.
Right.
And they're still going there, they die, their children take over those cases. Now, that's the kind of thing you would expect the ombudsman to be looking at and then reporting to Parliament. And because you report to the Kenyan people through the Parliament, that these are the cases that are being brought to us, this is how we have handled them, right? So the accountability is not to the president. The president is only nominating the person. The Parliament, on behalf of the people, approves the person, then they get to work and they report to Parliament, okay? There's no formulation that you will do that will necessarily please everyone. But that's on the ombudsman. Look at issues like the police council. I mean, we have a defense council. Has anyone raised an issue about it?
Right.
Yeah? So when you look at this document, and I'll say we commend the team that put it together. They did not go out of their way to create situations that we don't know, situations that are not familiar with. They've actually looked at what is working in this sector that we can replicate for this sector, because there's a demand for it. Yeah,
right.
And hence, if you look at it with an open mind, you'll find of all the things where they say on this clause we are on this article, we are opening it up, we changing this because of ABCD. And I would like to encourage the Kenyans to actually look at that report, particularly against each clause, each article that is being amended. If you go to the back, you will find the memoranda which gives the reason for opening it up. And there's a small snapshot that tells you we are doing this for the following reason. Then people will get to understand it better. And hopefully also within the civic education that will be between now and the referendum, we will get people now explaining things for purpose of getting people to understand rather than trying to confuse them. Yeah.
Okay. And the other sticky issue, of course, is to do with the IEBC. Explain to us how this is going to be a fair IEBC when it is appointed, or we have some commissioners appointed by political parties. Again, they would be serving at the whims of those political parties, or be viewed to be serving at the whims of those political parties. Because let's be honest, as a society, sometimes it's not what is factual, but it's perception. And they say perception is reality.
Now, if you remember the Kregra reports, had identified, and said we want to have a lean electoral commission.
Correct.
In fact, they had suggested, I think, maximum of 3 commissioners. Very dependent people bringing certain expertise. But it's the political parties in their submissions now went to this team and said, no, we don't want outsiders who don't understand political systems. Let us have those 3 people and have 4 commissioners appointed by the political parties. And if you remember, the first time this came up was in 1997 within the framework of the Inter-Parliamentary Political Group, the IPPG. They're the ones they were the first one to change and to introduce that the commissioners of the IEBC will be nominated by political parties based on their strength. So we're going back to what was tested in 1997. It worked so well in 2002 elections. There was challenges to it in 2007. Then we reconfigured it, and But it's like the more things change, the more they remain the same. So Kenyans still believe, as political players, the political parties are saying we need to have a say in the people who determine on the election, or at least part of the say. And this is consistent when we look at even within the commission, within the Public Service Commission, within the Parliamentary Service Commission, within the Judicial Service Commission, you'll find that the judiciary has a certain fair representation.
Right.
Within the Public Service Commission, the same. Within the Parliamentary Service Commission, we have members of parliament serving in the commission, because people believe unless you have one of your own, your issues are not going to be understood properly. And I have no problem. We're not saying that one party or the ruling party will appoint the commissioners. It's saying the main political parties will appoint those four. So really the competition has to be within the political parties.
But that seems a little bit murky and messy, in the sense that when we have political parties now having their interests in there, and not just as observers, but as commissioners, then it can be perceived that should there even, and let's face it, the kind of politics that we have is very contentious by virtue of the fact that numbers are very close. There'll always be that feeling that what if those commissioners played to the tune of their political party? How do we solve that?
If you look at the two main political parties, if they were to nominate even two each, right? These are the two main combatants in the election, in the first instance. So you'll find that you have two, for example now, two by NASA, two by Jubilee, and there's another three independent. Now, the two cannot ever, two by any political party would have then to conspire against five, which is an impossibility. Let's just see what had just happened in the US. We have a judge of the Supreme Court who just been voted in by 52 senators who are Republican, and rejected by 48 who are Democrats. Right? Now, that person will be there for life. But does that mean that that person will always think Republican? Okay? There are laws that basically kind of state what should be the role of a Supreme Court judge in the US. There are laws that will say what will IEBC commissioner, what they can do, what they cannot do. Yeah? Because once they get in, they remove their partisan cloth that took them there, and they have now to agree to work based on the IEBC laws. Laws
that are in place. Exactly. All right, let's finish off with the referendum law, because this is right on your desk as, a National Assembly, which we don't have in place. And of course, this document that we are discussing and talking about is currently at its proposal level, but requires a referendum law for it now to proceed. Are we going to be able to do this in time, given that we have elections in 2022? We have a very short space of time.
Yes, we have. In fact, we have two bills that were developed at different times and from different perspectives by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and by our Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. The two have gone through public participation, they've done all the validation, they've done their report, the reports have been tabled in Parliament. What we then have decided to do is, within last week and this week, the two committees have been meeting to harmonize this report so that we don't end up discussing two bills of the same subject. And by the time we get back week after next, I expect that to clear and give to Kenyans, perhaps within 1 month or so. Certainly within the National Assembly, we should have finished that within like 3 weeks to give them a referendum law passed by the National Assembly. It may have to go to the Senate, because obviously elections will also affect the counties. And I'm hoping, and we will be working together to ensure that before we close in December, we will have that bill cleared by the two houses, ready for assent. So that we open the door for Kenyans that we want a referendum in March or in April, there's an enabling legislation. Right. So that's our commitment to the Kenyan people, and we don't want to frustrate the process. In the meantime, what we'd encourage and would like to encourage is people to now read this document and read it objectively. And let's not just poke holes into it for the sake of looking for what it doesn't have. Yeah? Because BBI is not closing the door for people to bring in legislation, right? It's not stopping anyone who feels, for example, agriculture has not been covered from, bringing some amendment. We are doing a tea bill. We passed the tea regulations yesterday.
Right.
They were not in BBI, okay? But they affect, so people who are concerned about their milk, people who are concerned about their miraa, we have a crops amendment coming in next week or something to recognize some certain crops. So people have other avenues, yeah, beyond BBI. BBI was specific for purposes of bringing national unity, for purposes of removing all these tensions. And even on matters of the youth, much as it's important, how do we empower the youth, we can still bring a bill on, what we need to do to the youth. And we've already done that, for example, on the credit
the bill?
The credit guaranteeing scheme for micro enterprises.
Right.
So there's lots of things that will be happening, not necessarily covered within BBI.
The BBI.
Yeah.
All right.
But let's not look at BBI does not contain COVID. What do we do after COVID? BBI does not contain what happens to when my cow does not produce milk. There's all those things, but BBI was specific. And let's give it credit for that these guys did their best. Yeah? And
right.
It's going to solve our problem. Let's support the process as we also do the other bits and pieces that we are all
that we need to do.
Yeah.
All right, as we conclude, what's your message to Kenyans regarding the Building Bridges Initiative report? And I think it's important to also mention and note that this is currently at a proposal level. It's not yet concluded, and as a result, maybe Kenyans do have an opportunity to poke holes, like you've said, but also get convinced, like the Deputy President said, convinced me.
Yes, in fact, the more people read it and understand with an open mind, people get convinced. And also looking at, you reading it, but you must read it against what was the task, yeah? So you don't try to interpret the building, the report, based on the wrong expectation. So that's one. Two, this is not, this report was tabled first in November of last year. It was then people were called upon to go and validate and give further suggestion. Yesterday, it was released to the public with a view to actually take it to a vote. Now, if we then open up again another validation process, more viewing, people giving more views, we'll continue running in the same position. Because there will never be a time when people would say, but until all the views have been accepted, people continue forcing their views to be heard and then saying it does not contain this, it doesn't contain. There must come a time when we must say, yes, we've listened enough, we've captured what is possible, let's take this one to vote, and let's start BBI 2, BBI 3, yeah, in another 5 years, for additional views as because we live in a dynamic world, as other things change, yeah? So we'll have a second amendment or a third amendment or a fourth amendment. But for now, let's lock what we have. Take it to the people, all right? Because we only have 2 years before the election, yeah? We don't have the luxury of time. If we were starting this process in like 3 years ago, then we'll say, let's give ourselves another 6 months to bring in other stakeholders, yeah? But it does not matter at what point. There is never a time
that we'll all agree and say it is a perfect document. Of course, we are not going to get a perfect document.
Yes.
And, well, allow us to conclude right there. Thank you very much, Honorable Amos Kimunya, who's a majority leader in the National Assembly, just discussing the Building Bridges Initiative report, which, of course, looking at the response from Twitter, we have quite a number of people who still feel they are not convinced. But I think the message, the clarion call, is that let's read and interact with the document, fully understand it, then there is still an opportunity for Kenyans to decide whether we go to the referendum or not. It is now 22 minutes to 9 o'clock. We're going to take a short break right here on Morning Express, but do stay with us. We have Matters International News coming up on the other side of the break.